Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Megan Winch, and I am one of the recruitment and admission advisors here at the Saïd Business School in Oxford. Thank you for joining us for the first of our virtual open day MBA sessions. Before we start, I just want to check that you can all hear me okay. So if I could please ask you to type a yes into the chat box below. Lovely, thank you. Lots of yeses coming through. Thank you, everyone. So this morning we will be hearing from Liam Kilby, our Associate Director for MBA Admissions, who will be given an overview of the MBA programme. We will also have some time at the end for questions, so if you do have any questions throughout the session, please do use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, so different to the chat, just the Q&A box, to submit them, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. So I'm just going to hand over to Liam. Thank you, Liam.
Thanks, Megan, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. The admit list for this event is the largest one we've had, so we're hoping to see some really healthy numbers, and it's really nice to be able to see a lot of you, although I can't actually see any of you that are interested in hearing more about the Oxford MBA, and that's really why we're here today. So we'll take about 45 minutes to an hour to begin with to walk through the presentation that we have. I'll share some slides with you. We'll talk about the program. We'll talk about some things that make Oxford a little bit unique. We'll talk about the application requirements. We'll talk about the interview process. Any questions that you have, as Megan has said, please do put them into the Q&A box, and don't feel as though you have to wait until the end when we do have a dedicated Q&A session. We'll have about half an hour towards the end to answer those questions, but this is a team effort today. So you'll see me, I'll turn my video off in a moment when we get through the presentation, but we also have a team in the background. So Megan has already introduced herself. We have a few other members of the team that are there to answer your questions that we can't get to in that half an hour. So they'll be beavering away diligently in the background, typing any answers to questions that come through in the meantime. So if we're on a particular slide and you think, well, I have a question that I'd like to be addressed now on this slide, it's relevant to what we're talking about in the moment, send it through. And the team will either put it to one side for myself or my colleague Hannah, who's joining us later for the Q&A, to answer live, or they'll answer it in the written form and just reply to you in text. So don't be shy. The more questions, the better. There's no such thing as a bad question, so please do send it through. If it's on your mind, it's probably on the mind of a few other people that are watching as well. So let us know what questions you have, and we'll get started. And so when people think about Oxford, or if people have been to Oxford, then this picture that you can see on the screen is probably one that's very familiar to you. This is one side of Oxford that you'll get to enjoy as a member of the MBA cohort. This is the traditional historic college system. You can see in the picture, there's the Radcliffe Camera, there's a few colleges. Just behind the Radcliffe Camera is the Sheldonian Theatre and the Bodleian Library. Some really famous names and some really famous buildings. As a member of the MBA, you'll be a University of Oxford student first and a Saïd Business School student second. Because of that, you'll get access to all of these amazing facilities, as well as the business school itself, and that's where we are. And it's at this point I'll turn my video off so you can focus on the content of the presentation rather than my lockdown DIY haircut, and I'll be back with you for the questions a little bit later. And so this is the business school. This is essentially where you'll spend your 9 to 5 working day. Sometimes it's a 9 to 9 working day, depending on the things that you want to get involved with in the evenings. And so the first thing to talk about here probably is just, it's a one-year program, as we know. That brings a lot of benefits with it. That also brings some challenges too. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the slide. So your 9 to 5 working day will be spent here. You'll go home, you'll socialize, you'll join a sports team or a club or a society or a network within the wider university, and that's where the college system really comes into its own. Again, we'll go into more detail about that just a little bit later. In the business school, you'll have your lecture theatres. There's a library, that second floor that you can see just above the reception. There is the library. There are some dining areas. There are some self-study areas. There are some communal areas as well. Everything you would expect, both in terms of physical space, but also technology, is available in the business school. And this is where you'll spend all of your formal lesson time when you join. So thinking about an Oxford MBA and why Oxford. I'm not going to read this slide out to you. It's there in front of you to read through at your own leisure, but essentially what it's talking about here is developing leaders that are interested and curious about exploring how they can use their role in the future as a business leader, not only just to make sound financial business decisions, but also develop this broadened mindset and understanding of your role in society. So can you make decisions that will increase profit margins and improve your bottom line and make shareholders happy? And yes, and those things are important, of course. But at the same time, can you make decisions and use your level of influence as a future C-suite executive to be able to influence your workforce or society, community, or your region as a whole? And that's really at the heart of what we want to do here at Oxford. So if you're thinking about exploring that intersection between traditional business and society, then Oxford may well be a home for you. It's 1 year, as we mentioned, and so why a one-year MBA? This is the question that my team and I probably get more than anything else. And some of those reasons are obvious: lower opportunity costs, less time away from your career. It is intense and it is a busy year. If you speak to existing students or any recent alumni, they will talk about times of the year where they are worked hard. And while hard work is probably not a stranger to anyone listening today, otherwise you wouldn't be here, you still need to understand that at times you will feel stretched. And that's because we are trying to fit in as much as we can into a 12-month program. And on top of that, you have those wider experiences that you'll find in the wider university. But there is lower tuition. It's only 1 year of tuition. There is a shorter payback period. What I would say here is think about your own circumstances. We are very honest about the fact that a one-year MBA at Oxford may not be the right program or the right vehicle for everyone if you're looking to make a relatively drastic change in your life, whether that's change in geography, a change in sector, and a change in job function or role. Then any one-year MBA may be a challenge, because does it give you the time to build the networks and build up the level of expertise and skill acquisition that you feel as though you need and that you may be able to get more effectively in a 2-year program? So think about that, and we'll think about that too in your application. And we'll talk about application requirements a little bit later. If you're looking to accelerate your career, if you're looking to maybe return to a company you've already launched, if you're looking to maybe change 1 or 2 of those 3 things that I mentioned before, but not all 3, then maybe a one-year program is right for you. And don't get me wrong, if you're looking to change all 3 and you're an ambitious person and you still think that an Oxford MBA is right, we're not here to question that. We'll just ask you to elaborate a little bit further on the steps you've taken to understand that path and that process to ensure that you're setting yourself up for success in the best way, and that we are best placed to help you get there. The curriculum is generally a path that you'll take going from individual learning in those core courses, and there'll be some group work in that individual learning, through to the electives where you start to personalize the course a lot more in terms of what you're looking for to specialize in possibly. We have some integrative modules, we have some co-curricular activities, and then we have applied learning. And this journey is all about taking that individual learning and your expertise and applying it to a larger system. And that fits in with that goal that we're looking in terms of achieving with respect to that intersection with society and the role that a business can play. So for a bit more detail on the curriculum, this is the current year at a glance. For people that may or may not be familiar with Oxford, we have some strange traditions. One of those traditions is the way that we name the terms. So we have 3 academic semesters, Michaelmas, Hilary, and Trinity, and then we have a summer term where you can do extra things as well. So at a glance, you'll notice that in the first term, anything in red is a core module. That's what everyone must do. Everyone will cover those core modules. We split those terms into 2, so Michaelmas 1, Michaelmas 2, M1, M2, etc. So you can see straight away that we're teaching you the fundamentals of business to begin with. You'll become excellent at those fundamentals, ready for when you go into the integrative modules and the electives and you start to specialize. So the electives, you'll have a choice of around 7 minimum, possibly 9 if you choose to do more in the summer option. And we have a slide in a moment on just some of the electives that are available to you. Please bear in mind the elective choice is a relatively organic piece and will change a little bit year on year. And so some of the electives that we're about to show you may or may not be available at the time that you joined the course. They may have changed, they may have been replaced, they may have been taken out and replaced by new ones. A few things that I want to talk about on this slide: the GOTO project, the GOTO project that you can see on the screen there, that really is the vehicle that we use to explore this intersection between your role as a future leader and your role as a community and business and social impact leader, by taking you and giving you an option of a certain track to follow. So, for example, there's one overarching topic with GOTO each year. That topic could be anything from the future of healthcare that we've had in previous years, the future of work, big data, those kind of things. This particular year, we've talked about climate change. Within that topic, there's a number of different tracks that you can take based around your own individual interests, your own individual expertise. So you choose your track, and then you're entered into a group. It's a group work piece. And then you're assigned a tutor, and you'll work with your group and with your tutor, addressing the issues that you see within the track that you've chosen. The idea is then that you come back and present your solution to the year group as a whole, and there's a prize for the winning team. And it's less about the prize, I think, and more about the applying the learning that you've taken from semester one and the first half of semester two. So that happens very early on in the spring as the electives kick in. So what I would say here is that that first term with those core modules is relatively heavy in terms of formal learning. Your 9 to 5 working day will be split between a morning lecture for 3 hours, for example, an afternoon lecture for 3 hours. And then if you wanted to get involved with the co-curricular activities, which is that strand across the bottom, you can see there the finance lab, the consulting development program, for example, they often run in the evenings or sometimes at the weekends as well. And so if you want to get involved in those, and they're not mandatory, they're completely optional, but some people like to be able to specialize in a certain track, then you will be adding more workload to your already relatively high workload. So it's something to think about. We often get a question around, can I do more than one of those co-curricular activities if I wanted to? And while there's nothing stopping you from doing that, just be mindful of the fact that that workload will get very heavy very quickly. We have a Trinity term, which is generally full of electives. So by this point in the year, you're fully personalized in the choices that you're making with the lessons that you want to have. Generally speaking, the class size will go from about 80 people within your stream for the core modules in term one. The electives, the class sizes will change based on how popular that elective might be. You might be doing something that's relatively niche, but hugely important for your own development. It may be a class of 15 or 20 people. It may even be fewer than that. It may be a very popular elective that has a class of 40 to 50. And so that will change. So you're working maybe with fewer people in your electives, but they're all engaged in that topic because they've chosen to be there. Just quickly, the summer option, there's a bit of flexibility here with what you want to do. You can do an internship for credit towards the end of Trinity and then come back and do more electives in the school in the summer if you want to. You can do the electives first and then do the internship for credit for the whole of the summer. Or you can just choose to do electives or the strategic consulting project, the SCP, and we'll talk more about that if anyone has any particular questions. The final thing that I wanted to talk about on this slide is just a talent development program, again, that runs along the bottom. That is run by our Careers Development Center, and that really is designed to get you learning the softer skill set that you've identified that you need to be able to be a success post-MBA. So it may be things like public speaking, it may be things like negotiation skills, consultative sales skills, anything that you've identified that you want to work on to complement the formal education that you get from an MBA, so that when you graduate and you're going back to the workplace, you are fully armed with both the knowledge of the business MBA, but also the practical skill set and the softer skills to be able to succeed. So just a quick look at some of those elective choices. This isn't the entire list, and as I mentioned, this list may change. This is the list that was available for students that are currently on the MBA this year. I'll just leave this up here just for a few seconds so people can have a quick look before I move on to the next slide. Okay, there is also a chance, you may have noticed on the curriculum slide a couple of slides ago, to do some international electives, electives away from Oxford. We currently have 3 options available for international electives. We have growth prospects and opportunities for business in Africa. That will always generally take place in South Africa. It's normally around April, that time of year, depending on when the term dates stop and start. It's always that time of year, but it's kind of in the Easter break between terms. There is a fintech elective that takes place in London, not necessarily international, but it's away from Oxford. And then there is a digital transformation of marketing, media, and advertising in New York. Now, these electives generally take place at the very same time or very close to one another. And so it's often only the case that you can do maybe one of these rather than all of them. They also, to some extent, have a limit on the number of people that can go. I mean, there's not really any hard caps, I would say, but if you're looking to get involved with one of these electives, when it comes time to choosing your electives, which begins kind of the end of Michaelmas towards November, December time, that's when you start to think about the electives you want to pick. You might want to prioritize the ones that you really want to do to make sure that you're able to take part in them. And so a little bit on the class profile. This is the class that we have in the year at the moment. These numbers very rarely change too much. 329 people this year. That can be anything from 310 up to 335, depending on the intake. 64 nationalities, 95% international. Those numbers are nice and high. I'm not going to boast too much about those numbers because most European schools will have comparable numbers, but they are healthy numbers in terms of a level of diversity that we want to see in the class. We're really proud this year to have 44% female students. We are getting ever closer to the magical number of a nice 50-50 equitable split. We're very hopeful that for the coming year, starting in September, we'll be even closer to that than we are this year. And the 5 years average work experience and the 690 median GMAT, they very rarely change too much. The work experience range can be anything from, you know, the minimum of 2 years of experience that we look for, all the way up to anything around 12 to 15 years of experience in some cases. So the range is quite wide, but the average number is often the same. The median GMAT, as you can see, is at 690. Again, the range is quite wide. We'll talk about application requirements a little bit later, but if you're already thinking, well, I know my GMAT isn't a 690, does that mean that I can't apply? Absolutely not. That's not what we look for at all. The GMAT is just one of many things that we look for in your application. You will have absolute strengths elsewhere in your application if your GMAT is a little bit below that median. So please don't worry too much. We'll go into more detail in terms of application requirements in a few slides. What I want to talk about with international diversity is briefly the numbers of where people come from. You can see on the screen here exactly where some of our class, or where all of our class, if you add the numbers up together, come from. More importantly than look how many nationalities we have and look how many countries we can put a tick next to in a box in terms of representation in the class. And I'm not belittling that achievement. It's hugely important to have international geographic diversity. I personally think it's much more important to have a diversity of thought. And so if you think about one of the benefits of Oxford being embedded in that wider university, means that you also have a second network. So let's do each one of these in turn. The network that you have in your MBA class, 320 people from all over the world. But unlike some other strong business schools out there, we don't really have a level of renown for one particular sector. Without wanting to pick on any schools, because they're amazing institutions. INSEAD is very strong in consulting. LBS is very strong in finance, and other schools have their real strengths as well. We don't really have that one sector that we're known for. We have a focus on social responsibility, yes. That doesn't mean you have to be a social entrepreneur. That doesn't mean you have to want to change the world by yourself, but you have a level of curiosity to explore what that means for you in your future role. But because we don't have really a sector that we are famous for, we are more sector agnostic, I would say, it brings a wider range of backgrounds in terms of working experiences and life experiences to the class. And so within your class of 320, you'll have people working in visual arts, in theater, in music. You'll have people working in film and television. You'll have people working for large NGOs. You'll have people working in politics. You'll have people working in charities and smaller enterprises as well. And so when you're sat around a table trying to get to the bottom of a challenge that we've set for you, I would imagine that the level of diversity in terms of how people would approach that problem or approach that challenge might be slightly higher than some other schools that are very well known for one particular sector, where 70% of that group around that table are looking to get into consulting or finance or something else. And so their opinion of how to solve this is relatively homogenous. So diversity of thought, I think, is one thing that Oxford does stand out in compared to some of our peer schools. On top of that, the second network you have in the wider university, you'll be a member of the college, and we'll talk about colleges later. But in that college, you'll have dinner with people that are not studying MBAs. You'll have dinner with people that are studying undergrad, graduate degrees, PhDs in topics, anything from medieval languages and philosophy through to artificial intelligence and astrophysics and everything in between. And so some of those conversations that you have outside of your 9-to-5 working day in the college network with your peers across other disciplines brings a level of diversity that a standalone business school simply cannot offer. So if you're looking for an MBA that gives you the breadth of network and the depth of network that comes with an already very diverse MBA in terms of experiences, but one that's embedded in the wider university where you have access to a second network of people that are studying all these other interdisciplinary subjects, again, Oxford may be a home for you. Now, the big question with any MBA, well, one of them at least, is how will it affect my career? Can I get the job that I want to at the end of my year or my 2 years on the MBA? And an MBA is a big investment, both in terms of financially and also time away from your career, potentially time away from your family if you're coming to do this on your own, if you're leaving maybe your partner or children behind. And so it's huge that we have a level of outcome that you're looking for. You can see from this slide, and we've kind of split it into three areas. On the left-hand side, 91% of MBA graduates received a job offer within 3 months of graduation. That's the most recent careers report we have. The new careers report should be out relatively quickly, and that will show an increase in that number. The careers team is very good at getting you the job that you're looking for. After graduation, it's interesting to see that almost half of the class stay within Europe. That's either London or parts of Europe. It seems as though people are using a European MBA, an Oxford MBA, as maybe the first step into a relatively permanent transition into a European base for the next 3, 5, 10 years. And obviously that's different for everybody involved. We have most people stay within Europe, then it's Asia at 19%, and then it's North America after 14%. What I would say is have a look at the program during your research on MBAs that is well suited to get you the job, not just in the sector that you're looking for, but also in the country or the region that you're looking for. I used to work a lot in my role as recruitment manager in the team here in North America. And there are some companies in North America that still value a 2-year North American MBA over any 1-year European MBA. So if you're coming from the States and you're looking to return, or you're looking to go to the States for the first time post MBA, talk to that employer, research that company, and understand which program is the best one that suits you to get you to where you want to be. On the right-hand side, you'll see a breakdown of sectors. Again, this lends itself to that conversation we had just a few moments ago about how we're not really focusing on one particular sector. We're still strong in those two main areas that you would expect to see, consulting and finance. Global industry, which is kind of everything else. Within that, technology is the strongest thing there as well. So if you're looking to maybe break into a Google, a Facebook, an Amazon, or a small startup working in fintech or those kind of things, then the careers team is very well placed to be able to do that for you as well. The careers team is split into 4 main sections, and they're the 4 sections you can see on the screen here. So we have a team within the team for finance, one for global industry, one for consulting, and one for social impact, which does cover those other 3 at the same time. There'll be common support in all areas, the orange and yellow circles at the bottom of the screen, but there'll also be specific sector support within those teams within the larger career center. So if you're coming in with a particular goal in mind and it doesn't involve consulting and it doesn't involve finance. It may be global industry as a team that you really focus on and you talk to more than any of the others. You may never really speak to the finance men and women in the careers team to help you get that role because you don't need them. So the benefit of this is that we have targeted people within those teams that have come from industry. And I'll use an example that I often use here. We have a gentleman called Tom Lawrence who, before joining us about 3 years ago, his role was recruiting MBAs into Amazon Europe-wide, and he would speak to graduating students and place them and find them roles within Amazon, both in the UK and further within Europe. And we stole him, we poached him from Amazon. He now works for us, and we flipped him over to our side, and he now gets people ready to be hired by Amazon. So he still has the contacts at Amazon. He's still got the industry knowledge of working there himself. So these people, they're not just academic people working at a university careers team. They are people that have forged their own careers in these industries and are well placed to be able to give you the skills you're looking for, to give you the networks that you need to succeed, and to be able to place you in the roles that you want once you've graduated. What I would say about the careers team and about the careers piece in general is that it is still a two-way conversation. Please don't make the mistake that some people sometimes do, where they come to Oxford and think, well, I'm in, I've been accepted, I'm going to be successful, the career that I want will just fall into my lap once I've graduated. It is still hard work, guys, to get the job that you're looking for. That probably isn't news to anyone. But getting into Oxford is just the first thing on that path. You have to engage with the careers team. You have to bring some ideas with you. Go to the events that they put on, meet the people that they're networking with. Even if it's not the company that you particularly want to work for necessarily, the networking skills you can gain or the contacts you can gain from that networking session could help you further down the line. So it's a balance between learning the MBA and gaining the technical knowledge, but also putting the legwork in to that careers piece as well. The careers team will support you as much as they possibly can, but you still need to meet them halfway. Just a quick slide on some of the companies that have hired Oxford MBA graduates over the past few years. You'll see some very recognizable names on there. With regards to the people that succeed in the careers piece, it's the people that come into the MBA with a plan. Now you can change that plan, and often people do. They'll come into the MBA and 6 weeks in, they'll meet somebody, whether it be a peer, a member of faculty, one of the careers team, and they'll be inspired to do something that they didn't expect that they wanted to do, but now it's their sole focus. So you can change your plan. Even in a one-year program, you can do that, but just engage the careers team at every point. If you do change your plan, go and speak to the careers team and say, I now want to do this. How can you help? What can I do? So don't wait until it's time to think about an internship, maybe in March or April, and think, oh, I should probably go and meet my careers team because I haven't spoken to them yet. You have to hit the ground running with the careers piece. So please engage them as quickly as you can. Okay, so colleges. This, again, is another picture of the Radcliffe camera, similar to the very first picture that we showed you. This is what is unique about Oxford. And to be fair to Cambridge, Cambridge have this too. So I'm not going to say we're the only school that has it. We do it better, probably. And I'm allowed to say that because I was born in Cambridge and I work for Cambridge University. So I have seen both worlds and what is good and what is less good about both worlds. So we do it better. We have around 40 or so Oxford colleges. What that essentially means is they are autonomous, self-run campuses around the university that house accommodation. They have churches, they have sporting facilities, they have common rooms where you can go and hang out and mix with other people in your college that may not be on your MBA course. Within the college network, as I mentioned before, you might join a club or a sports team or a society. You'll have formal dinners, normally once a month, if not more frequently than that. As a member of the MBA, you'll be a member of one of the Oxford colleges, and you have a choice as to which one you would like to be put forward to. And that choice comes after you've been made an offer of admission. So after your interview, it's not part of the application process for the program. You'll have some of your MBA classmates in your college with you, but the MBA is spread over about 30 of those 40 colleges because the other 10 generally are undergraduate only, or they're too small to have really many graduate students. So as an MBA student, you'll have a choice of 30, roughly, different colleges to pick from. And we often get the question here, well, which college do I pick? How do I know which one to pick? And it's a very personal choice. There is no bad Oxford college, to be fair. Some of them are very different. Some, the ones you can see in this picture here, especially towards kind of the top right-hand corner of this picture, they are some of the original colleges built in the 1300s, built in the 14th, 15th centuries, and they're very old, they're very traditional, they're very kind of authentic Oxford. We have other colleges that are much newer, including one actually that is opening for the first time in the next year or so. And so we're still constantly adding to that college list. And so it comes down to personal preference. Do you want to feel as though you're really in the heart of things, in the center of Oxford? And Oxford's a relatively small city, folks. You can walk from one side to the other. You can certainly cycle everywhere that you need to go. There's no reason to own a car at all. So no college is really far away from the business school, but some are closer than others. So proximity to the business school might be one of your factors. The architecture might be another one of your factors. It may be that there's some famous alumni that has walked down those corridors and you want to follow in his or her footsteps and think, he or she has inspired me. I want to kind of be in the same place they were when they went to Oxford. It may be that you want to go to a college that has more MBA students than others. And so you can really solidify that MBA network within your college. Or you may be a braver person than I am, frankly, and go to a college that has 2 or 3 MBA students, and it forces you to talk to some of those wider university students because there's no one really from your course to fall back on. So whatever your reasons, they're all completely valid. They'll all be completely personal to you. There is no bad choice, but it's worth thinking about which will give you the kind of experience that you're looking for within the college network and going for that one. The university student network, as I mentioned before, is one that is unparalleled. The MBA here at Oxford is about a third bigger than the MBA at Cambridge with regards to being the other school that has this wider university network. And so if you're looking to maybe build an effective, globally diverse network, yes, Cambridge will have that, but we'll have it in a slightly bigger way. We'll have more people that you can build a network with. And again, that wider university student network is there for you to dip your toe in and out of as much or as little as you want to. You'll have time, and if you speak to alumni, they'll talk about this. You'll have time to do 2 things well outside of your MBA workload. One of those might be a sport that you want to play. One of those might be an amateur dramatic society you want to join. One of those might be another club entirely. It might be the debate team you want to get involved in. It could be anything at all, but you'll have time to do 2 things well. You will absolutely have time to take advantage of this wider university network as much or as little as you want to. And when I interview candidates for admission onto the program, they sometimes ask me, Liam, what do you think a successful candidate looks like at the end of the MBA program? And it's a very personal answer, but my answer is someone that has found the balance between doing well in the MBA and getting the career and the job opportunity that they're looking for, but also has found time to network and branch out and talk to those wider students. Some of the conversations you will have over dinner with these other students of other disciplines will absolutely blow your mind. If you are inclined towards sports, and even some non-sports as well, and we'll talk about that in a second, there is an MBA tournament, the MBAT. It's held at HEC in Paris every year. There's about 15 or so European schools that take part. Essentially, it's a mini Olympic Games for business schools. It didn't take place this year for obvious reasons, but for the past 3 years, we have won it. We hadn't won it at all until then. So we won it for the first time a few years ago, and we've won it every year since. If you come to Oxford and you are looking to get involved in this, then there is a level of pressure that you will definitely feel to keep this going. The outgoing student body, if you talk to any of them, will say, the most important thing is you win the MBATs. You have to win the MBATs. And it could be anything from traditional sports. There's rowing, there's some rugby, there's basketball. There's also some chess. There's a battle of the bands. There's some dance in there as well. So it doesn't have to be those traditional sports. If you're looking to get involved, then we would definitely want to hear from you about your skills in that area. And then just one final thing about the wider network here at the university and the colleges. We have a few things that allow you to kind of step away from the MBA while still kind of being involved in some aspects. So the Oxford Foundry is the space that we have just a few yards down the road from the business school that is kind of the open plan incubator space for people that are thinking about social impact in terms of entrepreneurs, in terms of coming up with an idea, launching a company that is designed to create social impact in positive ways. Now, that is open to the wider university. That isn't just a business school student thing. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you think entrepreneurship is something that you want to explore fully during your time here, you may well spend a lot of your time at the Oxford Foundry with people that are like-minded from the wider university. Alongside that, people may have heard of our Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship. That is a centre that will run certain initiatives, certain events, and certain competitions throughout the year that are designed to look at the practical skill set of becoming an entrepreneur. It's the Skoll Centre that will run the Social Impact Lab, for example, one of the co-curricular options. But there are also kind of awards that are given out and competitions you can enter to secure funding for your business idea. And we have some good examples that I'll go into in a later session if we have time, about some people that have done just that during their time at Oxford on the MBA. There are also some student tracks. So these aren't formally for credit. They're not part of the curriculum, but they are designed to help you network and help you kind of liaise with businesses in certain parts of the world. So for example, they're student run along with the careers team often, and it may be a week-long trek to Southeast Asia to go and work with local finance leaders in that region. It may be a student trek to Africa to go and work with local leaders in that region. The venue will often change each year because they're student-led, and so wherever the students have an interest in going, or wherever the students have a level of knowledge, they know the networks, they know the businesses. A student will come up with an idea, him or herself, and go to the careers team and say, I would like to run a trek this year for myself and my peers to this location. We had a trek to Israel this year, for example. It turned out it was a virtual trek in the end because of obvious reasons, but it still happened. And so the student treks can be anywhere and everywhere that are designed to help you meet with leaders within a certain sector, within a certain geography, again, to help expand your network and increase your chances of being able to secure a job role in that area post MBA. So just quickly on application requirements, and I say quickly because I think some of the questions that we'll get at the end that we have half an hour to run through may well be on this area. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this slide. On this slide, you can see a list of everything that essentially is mandatory for an application to be considered complete. Now, the one at the bottom is in italics, and we'll talk about that separately. But you must have an undergraduate degree. You need to have at least 2 years of professional experience. We need a GMAT or a GRE score. And to anticipate a question here, no, we have no preference for which one you pick. Either of those will be perfectly valid. We look for 2 references. They can be professional or academic or one of each. Just choose the 2 people that know you well, that can talk about your strengths in a constructive and detailed way, and don't fall into the trap of thinking, who is the most senior person I can find in my institution to give me a reference? The CEO, his or her words will not carry more weight just because he or she is the CEO. If they don't know you that well and they can't talk about the strengths and how you've applied yourself within your role, that can well be a waste of a reference. Don't fall into that trap, please. Online assessment, there's a whole slide on that in just one slide's time, so we'll come back to that in a second. That online assessment has replaced one of the essays, and so the only written piece really is your supporting statement, which is 250 words, and essentially asks you to tell us something that we don't know about you. And you can use that supporting statement for anything. Some people use it to address a lower than they had hoped GMAT or GRE score. Some people use it to address a GPA that they weren't very happy with the reasons behind their lower performance. Some people choose to go very personal and talk about something that happened in their personal life, maybe something that happened within their family that has made them focus on the particular sector or industry they want to work in. And so, again, there's no right or wrong answer for the supporting statement. I would say be as open and as personal and as honest as you are happy to share, because a lot of what we look for is the person behind the GMAT score or the person behind the GPA. Your personality, who you are, how you'll fit in with the cohort we're trying to build, how you'll interact with your classmates is equally, if not in some ways more important then have you got a GMAT that's over 600, and those kind of questions. So the supporting statement can really give you an opportunity to make yourself stand out from the crowd. And in an application cycle where we see a number of applications and only have so many spaces to give, standing out from the crowd is something you really want to aspire to do. Just quickly, English language proficiency. If English is not your native language, if you have not attended a university level degree program that was solely taught in English, you may need to either sit the IELTS or the TOEFL English proficiency tests. If you have any questions about your personal circumstances, do you qualify for a waiver? Does your degree being taught in English, does that exempt you? Then reach out to the team, ask those questions. There are lots of different scenarios that I won't go into at this stage because it will take the rest of our time. But you may well need to take one of those tests if you fall into that category. The online assessment, just briefly, is essentially video questions that we ask you to do on the spot. So you'll dial into the system. There'll be some pre-recorded videos that you'll watch. It'll be one of either my team or myself asking you a question on video. You'll have maybe a minute to think about your answer. The timer will tick down and then it starts recording automatically. And you just record yourself giving us your answer. There are 4 video questions and there was 1 written piece, so 5 questions in total. Your application is not complete until you complete this online assessment. So when you go through the application process, you'll notice that it's not there to begin with. You'll upload your CV or your resume, you'll answer the career questions, you'll do the supporting statement, you'll upload your GMAT score, and then only when you click submit does the online assessment become available. So please don't think that you're complete and then click submit just before the deadline to then only find out you then have the video questions still to do. They have to be done before the deadline or on the deadline to be considered a complete application. There'll be some practice questions on there so you can kind of understand how the audio video is working. Is your internet connection strong enough? And it is very good even in areas of weak connection. And it is timed. So as well as the minute you get to prepare, you'll have about a minute or a minute and a half, depending on which question you get, to give us your answer. So there's no real chance to go away and think about it for a few minutes, then come back and speak. It is really designed to understand how you react on the spot and how you're able to draw on your experiences in your life. And it can be personal and professional life so far. So the application stage deadlines for this coming year, these are all for September 2021 entry. Applications open on August the 1st. You can start applying from that point. The first deadline, as you can see, is the September the 11th of this year. We'll have some questions, I'm sure, about which application stages are better than others. So if you have questions about that, send them through. We'll go through that in the Q&A session towards the end. Just briefly about scholarships. There is a number of scholarships available for students at Oxford. This list is by no means the entire list. We just couldn't fit them all onto one slide. On average, I would say maybe between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 people get some form of funding. And that can be anything from a financial need bursary through to a full scholarship. And some of these scholarships on this list are full scholarships in terms of your tuition is covered. And there's also a living expenses stipend for the year as well. They fall into 2 main categories. The Saïd Business School Foundation scholarships, the ones that are named as such on this list, we generally control ourselves, and they are given out for a number of different regions. Some could be regional, some could be academic merit, some could be based on profile, some could be based on the fact that there's just something that stands out about you that we can't find in someone else. You're just unique, and therefore we want to attract you to the school. We control those ourselves, and they're given out from the very first stage. So as soon as stage 1 ends in September and we interview those candidates, we'll start to give out the scholarships straight away. One of the reasons that stage 1 could be a good idea. We'll go into that later. The other group of scholarships are kind of in partnership with organizations that are attached to the university. So for example, the Skoll scholarship towards the bottom of this list is an example of that. The one at the bottom, Weidenfeld-Hoffmann, is an example of that, where there are other requirements that you must meet. First of all, you have to meet the kind of profile that those organizations are looking for, and it's worth researching what they're looking for to see if you do meet that profile. On top of that, there's almost always an essay you have to complete to be considered for the scholarship. That's on top of the supporting statement we talked about a few slides ago. And there's often an interview for the scholarship itself, on top of your admissions interview into the program. These will often have their own timelines. So for example, to be considered for Scholl, you must apply no later than January. So we have 4 deadlines in the year. You would have noticed from the previous slide, one of those is in April. That's our final stage. If you apply in April, there is a very strong possibility that a lot of these scholarships will have already, the deadline will have passed. The interviews will be happening at the time that you're applying for the program, so you'll have missed out. So do a level of research here to understand which scholarships you have a very strong chance of gaining, and make sure that your timeline for application fits with their deadlines and you understand all of the requirements you'll need to meet to qualify. Is there an essay? Do you need to prepare for an interview? What other parts of your profile can you highlight to give yourself the best possible choice? I just want to talk about the 1+1 MBA. This is a very unique program, and hopefully some people on the webinar today will have heard about it and may already be interested in this. This is essentially a 2-year program, and in that 2 years, you get 2 different graduate degrees. So in the first year, you'll do a master's degree in a department in the wider university of your choice, and there are some official partner programs that we'll talk about in the next slide. In the second year, you'll come to the business school and you'll do the 1-year MBA. So at the end of the 2 years, you'll have your MSc in a particular discipline complemented with the MBA at the end of that 2nd-year program. This is designed to give you a really deep dive in that first year into the area you really want to specialize in, while at the same time, when you graduate from that first program, you can then do the wider, more generalist business MBA in the business school that allows you to put the principles you've learned in the deeper dive into practice in the real world. So it's worth thinking about this if you're looking to really specialize, to really be an industry leader in a certain industry in the future, rather than be a relatively strong generalist MBA graduate student. You really want to have a level of renown and a level of skill in a particular area. And some of those areas are on the screen here. You can see some departments around the university where you can do a number of different options in that first year before you join the MBA. Now, if you research this program and you think there's a level of official program that I'm interested in, but there's really this other program that I'm not sure if it's an official partner or not, just reach out, we'll have a conversation. We're constantly looking to add to the number of official partners that we have on the 1+1 program. We'll see what we can do to consider you as a 1+1 student, even if you're interested in a program that isn't officially a partner. Now, there's no guarantees that we can give there, but I don't want you to feel as though you are restricted by your choice by just what is on the screen and what is on the website. So again, do some research, have a look into the options that are available to you. And if you don't see one that you think is the right one for you, and you can make a compelling case that it is the right one for you, then I would absolutely welcome you to get in touch. The application process for the 1+1 is a little bit different in that you apply for both programs in the same cycle. Even though you're doing one and then the other, you don't wait to apply to the MBA in your first year, because that's the 2nd year. You apply together. So they'll have different application requirements. The left-hand side of the screen is the route you would take for your master's degree. That's your year 1 program. You select the master's degree, you check what their requirements are, you apply to that department by their relevant deadline, you then receive the offer. At the same time, within one of our 4 application stages that we talked about a few slides ago, you'll do the GMAT, GRE, you'll apply by stage 3, please, that's January, to be a 1+1 student. You'll have your MBA admissions interview, you'll receive the MBA offer, and then you'll get a joint admissions letter that says, congratulations, welcome to the 1+1. And then the MBA gets pushed back a year while you do the MSc. So just bear in mind that that's going to be a big piece of work. The MSc application deadlines each department will often have 1 or 2 each year. There's always one in January. Sometimes they'll have one in November before that. Sometimes they'll have one in March afterwards. So research the department that you're looking to do the MSc and make sure you understand their own timelines. You might want to stagger your applications and do the MBA or the MSc first. You can apply to the MBA in September. We open applications on August the 1st, as I've said. You can do the MBA application, get it out of the way before your applications even open for your MSc. I would recommend not doing both at the same time. Each one of these is a big piece of work. So to apply to 2 programs within the same deadline probably should be avoided unless you have really no other choice. If your workload with your career or with your family life is so large that you only have a certain window and you have to do everything in that window, then fine, do it. Other than that, I would try and stagger them as much as I possibly can. One of the benefits of the 1+1 program is that there is a scholarship, the Pershing Square Scholarship, that will cover tuition fees and a living stipend for both years. So for the whole of that 2-year program, for both the MSc tuition and living expenses and the MBA tuition and living expenses, we can cover all of that for you if you are selected for the scholarship. This scholarship is open only to 1+1 students. So again, if you're thinking about that program and you think you might qualify for what Pershing Square are looking for in the profile they seek for scholars, then you would absolutely want to be applying for this scholarship. This will have a separate essay and a separate interview on top of all the other things you have to do to be admitted into the 2 programs. On top of those, you'll have all of that requirements for the Pershing Square Scholarship as well. To anticipate the question, we normally give out about 5 or 6 Pershing Square scholarships on the 1+1 each year. Yeah. Okay, so just some next steps. What can you do next? Thank you for joining us all today. If you haven't already, you can download a brochure from our website. That will give you a chance to understand in more detail the application requirements, in more detail the application stages. It will also give us a chance to get in touch with you if you allow us to keep you posted on things that are happening within the program. You can connect with our team. We have a team that's regionally based around the world. They're all based in Oxford, but they work within different regions. And so you'll have a group of 3 people, a team within a team based on which country you happen to reside in at the moment. So when you get in touch with us, we'll feed you through to the correct team working within your region, and you can have a conversation with them about your individual circumstances, your own individual goals, to make sure we can give you the best support that we possibly can. If you haven't already, reach out to existing students or alumni. Now, what I would say is that existing students are generally quite busy people. We would recommend, if you want to get in touch with them, LinkedIn is often the best way to do so to begin with, simply because the ones that have the time to reply will do so. Please don't be too upset if it takes a while for them to get back to you. They do have a relatively high workload, and often we think alumni might be slightly better for that reason. They don't have the workload of an MBA currently. They are very recent alumni, so they've got some good experiences and they can tell you just what the program is like, but they don't have the workload that existing students do. And if you need help connecting with alumni, then let us know. If you're looking for a particular profile or somebody working in a particular sector, then the team may well be able to help with that. But again, LinkedIn has some great search tools that allow you to search for Saïd Business School and then specifically for alumni, and then drill down into a particular sector or region or even city. And so that may well be your first port of call. An open day. We're doing an open day today. This is the first of a few sessions today. We have another few sessions next week. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for all of those. We're really looking forward to showcasing what the MBA can be like in some of these virtual sessions. So please do join us for all of the sessions that you can. If you can't join live, but you've registered, then they'll be recorded and you'll be able to dial in a little bit later and watch at your own leisure. And then the final thing probably is the one thing that anecdotally people will say takes the most time, and it's just make sure you prepare well enough for the GMAT or GRE. It's probably a number of years since anyone has really done any university level maths, since they've graduated. And so it may be a little bit alien to you. It might take a little bit of time to get back into it. People will often talk about anything from 60 to 100 hours of prep time to get the score that they are individually happy with. And so it is a big piece of work, and it will eat into the spare time that you have. And so starting that early is definitely the right thing to do. You may find that you might want to take the test twice, maybe even sometimes 3 times, because you want to be sure that you've got the score that you know is representative of your capabilities. And some people don't get that the first time around. So make sure you build into your schedule enough time to both prep for the test and possibly enough time to take a second one after the first attempt, but still before the deadline that you're aiming for. I'm just going to leave you with this quote from our dean, Peter Tefano. Again, I'm not going to read it out for you. You'll be able to read that for yourself. That's the end of the presentation. folks, I've amazed myself by staying within the hour that I told you that I would be able to. I often talk a little bit too much. So today has been a first for me. Thank you for joining me for this groundbreaking moment. I'm going to open up to Q&A in just the next few minutes. So if you haven't had your question put through yet, please type into the Q&A box. And I can see just on my screen here, we have 118 questions in there at the moment. Hopefully the team will have been beavering away in the background answering some of those already. So I'll give you a few minutes just to get your questions together. I'll turn my video back on and then we'll be able to go through some questions in a moment. And I'll be joined, and I'm very happy to say I'll be joined by my colleague, Hannah Griffiths. Hannah is one of our recruitment and admissions managers working within certain regions. And so you may well have already spoken to her in previous emails. This may be the first time that you've met her, but Hannah and I will answer questions live. We'll still have a team working in the background answering questions by replying via the text box. So please do send through all the questions that you can. But thank you very much for your attention so far. Let me turn my video back on and then we'll join you with some questions now. So over to the team. What questions do you have for me, please?
Thank you, Liam. So we've got loads of great questions coming in. We'll start off with one from Sulman. He asked, what is the difference between round 1 and round 2 application stages and which round is better to apply to?
Hannah, I've been talking for an hour. Would you like to start off with this one, please?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone who's dialed in. I've been keeping an eye on the questions in the background and we've had loads come through. Lots of them are of a similar vein, so hopefully we'll manage to get through some of the more popular ones in the next 30 minutes while the team are still answering in the background. So stage deadlines was kind of a common thread that came up in lots of the questions that came through. So I guess there's a few things to say here. So stage 1 and stage 2 are relatively similar in terms of deadlines to apply to. So stage 1 obviously falling on the 11th of September for anybody who's looking to get their application in early, and then stage 2 on the 30th of October. If you apply in those stages, the advantages are that you're in kind of the first 2 groups of people to be considered for an MBA offer. You're also applying at a point when the majority of scholarships are available. So particularly if you apply in stage 1, all of the scholarship options are available at that point. For the scholarships that we manage at the business school, you'll be considered for those at the end of every stage deadline. So obviously if you apply in stage 1 and you're not successful in securing one at that point, you'll be considered again at the end of stage 2, the end of stage 3 and the end of stage 4. So an obvious advantage there is that you're giving yourself ample opportunity to be considered for that funding. If you are interested in being considered for external scholarships and some that we run in conjunction with the wider university, you have to make sure to get your application in by the stage 3 deadline, which falls in January. And so as a result, that tends to be our biggest stage deadline when we get the bulk of our applications through. The big difference then that means is really for stage 4. So when we get to stage 4, we usually make a smaller number of offers at that point, and we'll sometimes run a wait list from stage 4 as well. And there's usually a reduced amount of funding available at that point. So I would say best piece of advice is to apply when your application is at its absolute strongest. But if that can be in the early stages, there are some advantages to that for sure.
And just further to Hannah's comment about volume, guys, I'm happy to share these numbers with you. In stage 1, traditionally we'll have maybe 250 people apply. In stage 2, it goes up to about 350, 375. And then as Hannah mentioned, in stage 3, it's a big spike. We'll get over 700 applications in stage 3. So in terms of a chance of admission onto the program, with more applications, we'll do more interviews and we'll offer more places. So the proportion of people from that applicant pool that get interviewed roughly stays the same in those first 3 windows. When we get to stage 4, it's a different question because the class is beginning to get quite full and we have fewer spaces left to give. But in terms of chances of admission, there really is no difference, to be honest, between stages 1, 2, and 3, because we'll just interview more people if we have more applications. But it does help with the scholarship question that Hannah's talked about.
Great, thank you for that, guys. So the next question, I've actually grouped together a few questions around international exposure. So if candidates haven't directly worked overseas, how can they best demonstrate their international experience that they've gained through their organisation so far?
I'll start with this one, Hannah, and jump in when I run out of things to say. So there's a couple of ways you can do it, both inside of your work and also outside. So inside of your work, if you haven't, been posted overseas, worked in an overseas office for a year or been seconded anywhere other than your home country, you may well have worked on projects that have been cross-regional, working with other teams, albeit remotely from your home country with teams that are based in another region, and you've had to work with them to achieve a common goal. That can show a really good level of working across different cultures, different business practices, and that's a really good way of showing it. Outside of work, have you traveled? Have you gone on a holiday or vacation overseas? Like, it's still international exposure. It doesn't have to be in a professional setting. So we have a number of people that have taken some time away from their university career or their professional career to go and travel for 6 months, 12 months to a different part of the world to really absorb other cultures and get to know other people. So think creatively about how you can talk about your experiences. It doesn't always necessarily have to be in a professional setting. And that goes for a lot of the things that we look for in the application.
Yeah, I think just because I did notice there was lots of questions coming in about this as well. And I think just to say, having international exposure isn't a mandatory requirement for the MBA either. So it's one of the things that we would look for when we're looking at somebody's CV, for example. But equally, we would look for examples of progression that you've had across your career and any leadership opportunities that you've had in your career to date. So it's great if you have had some international exposure, but, please don't feel that if you haven't had that opportunity to, to this point in your career, that you're at a huge disadvantage.
Okay, great. Timor has asked, is Oxford MBA interested in entrepreneurs to apply? I have a relatively small business.
Hannah, do you want to take it?
There we go. So the answer is yes, I would say. We probably haven't touched on it too much when we did our overview of the curriculum, but there is a huge focus on entrepreneurship across the Oxford MBA. So obviously an obvious example of that we did touch on is the entrepreneurship project. That is a mandatory part of the MBA program. But the entrepreneurship centre will be a big part of your MBA experience as well. You'll work very closely with them on the entrepreneurship project, but there's also lots of opportunities that they'll offer across your year on the Oxford MBA. They run things like the Oxford Seed Fund. They'll give you access to a huge network of other entrepreneurs through their own network. You can arrange to have individual sessions with those people. There's also the Oxford Foundry, the Scholl Centre for Social Entrepreneurship. So there's loads of examples both across the curriculum and in the co-curricular offer. So absolutely, we are very keen for entrepreneurs to apply, and there's lots of support and opportunity available for you once on programme.
Thank you for that. So another question I've got here is, what is the difference between our Oxford MBA 1-year duration and 2-year MBA programs? Do we offer the same benefits? Is there anything we're cutting out?
So I'll start on this one, Hannah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Is there anything that we're cutting out? No, I mean, we're cutting out a year. So apart from that obvious thing, within that year, you'll still find everything that you would expect in a 2-year program. So there's still a chance for an internship in the summer, for example. That's a big thing that people often think, well, that must be missing then in a 1-year program. And no, it's not missing. You can do the internship should you want to. It's one of 3 options you have in the summer. So you'll still have access to the same kind of learning. You'll still have the same content in a 2-year MBA. Yes, it will be a little bit more intense. And this goes back to what I was saying before about think about your own personal circumstances, what you're trying to achieve in your career. How close are you to it before you join the MBA? And therefore, do you need a 2-year versus a 1-year program? So it's a relatively short answer, but no, nothing is missing. Because nothing is missing, it's a busy year. And again, I would stress that people think, well, Liam's talked about how busy it is and the existing students talk about how busy it is. I think I'm ready for how busy it is. And then you get here and 3 weeks in, you'll have a conversation with me about, Liam, I had no idea how busy it was going to be. So I cannot stress enough that at times you will feel stretched. Prepare yourself for that. But other than that, anything you would expect to find in a 2-year MBA, you will find in our 1-year MBA here at Oxford.
Lovely, thank you. There's a few questions around, is there an age limit for the MBA, and will this impact your application at all?
So I would say there's no limit whatsoever. During your conversations that you have with myself, with a member of the team, with Hannah, with some of her contemporaries, we may have a conversation about who you want to surround yourself with. So if you think about the age range in the MBA, as I mentioned before, the work experience is anything from 2 years of experience, people at 24, 25 years old, all the way through to 12 to 15 years worth of experience, the late 30s. And so if you're at maybe the top end of that experience range, and you think, I want to surround myself with people that I can learn from, I can develop under and with, then it may be that the executive MBA will give you a cohort that is better suited for your individual needs. Having said that, if you come to us and say, here are my circumstances, this is what I'm trying to achieve in my career, I believe the one-year MBA is the right choice for me as an individual, we will not exclude you from being considered or accepted based on your age. It just does not happen. But expect to have a conversation about why you think the MBA as a one-year full-time program is maybe better suited for you than an executive MBA where you'll be surrounded with people that are similar experience level to you. That's the only thing that we'll ask you about. But if you have a compelling answer to that, then no, there's no issue at all.
Great. So the next question, again, I've grouped together some questions so Tanmay and others have asked around this. So the post-MBA support, could you allude to some of the access to alumni that we have, but also the access to facilities post an MBA journey? So what is open for alumni, basically?
Hannah, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so I guess the first place to start is probably with our Career Development Centre. So I know Liam talked about the support that they offer quite a bit through his presentation, but that support is something that continues post-MBA. So I think it's for about 6 months after you graduate from the programme. They'll still be in touch with you and still be supporting people through their kind of career journey once they get out the other side of the MBA, especially if you're somebody maybe who hasn't secured employment as you're moving through the program, or still potentially working out kind of what space you want to be in, where you want to be in post MBA. We have a really active alumni network. We have a dedicated alumni team at the business school who work to make sure that our chapters are growing and that they're active. So there's plenty of opportunity to engage with those as well. I'm not sure, Liam, anything I'm missing?
Probably just one thing I would mention about, we're a member of GNAM, kind of a collaboration of business schools around the world. And what we're looking to do, and I'm sure Liz won't mind me talking about this, our MBA director, Liz Starbuck-Greer, is looking at giving opportunities post-MBA to then work with or learn from some other partner schools within the GNAM network. So once you've graduated and you've left Oxford behind, it may be that there's a chance there to do some kind of exchange program with another business school or with another institution that can then further your learning beyond what you've been able to do in the year with us. And that's still a bit of a work in progress at the moment. It's not currently available to this year's class, but it's something we're hoping to install in the future. So that could well be in place by the time people join us on the webinar today.
Yeah, and I think if any of you have been kind of dialing into some other webinars that we've been having, and even later this afternoon, I know we're having an alumni panel session then as well. Our alumni network are amazing, and they very much believe in paying it forward. You know, they're really happy to have you connect with them on LinkedIn to share their experiences with you and advise you on their MBA journey. For us on the recruitment team, they're a massive help. So they'll often come to in-person events that we run and sit on panels. And now that we're operating more virtually, have been amazing in terms of the help that they've offered us as well. So, you know, they are definitely there as a resource for anybody who's considering the MBA and are also really, really active once they get out the other side as well.
Great, thank you. Bilal has asked, do international students need the TOEFL or the IELTS, even if their undergraduate degree was taught in English?
So just to clarify here, if your undergraduate degree was taught completely, comprehensively in English and no other language, then there is a good chance you will not need the TOEFL or the IELTS. I say good chance because I don't want to promise that everyone that falls into that category can be waived of that requirement, but I would recommend that person get in touch and just explain the situation. We'll often need some kind of proof, whether that's a something on the transcript that mentions this was taught in English, a letter from the university to explain that the medium of instruction was English. Some universities we're familiar with around the world that we know teach in English, some we may not have come across before. So short answer, no, you won't need one, but longer answer, get in touch and we'll have a conversation.
Great. We've got some questions from Lewis and Aninda and others about the ideal candidate that we look for. So aside from the standard requirements that we have, how would we define an ideal Oxford MBA candidate? What do we look for?
Hannah, I'll let you start with this one, because if I take this question, I'll use up the rest of the time just on this one question. So I'll add some things that maybe you missed or that.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because I often think, we obviously get asked this quite regularly, and I imagine that across our team, we possibly all give quite different answers anyway. So it'd be interesting to see. So I would say one of, obviously apart from the mandatory requirements and all of the things that we've talked about today in terms of your application, one thing that we are really looking for is people who are collaborative. You know, a big part of what we're thinking about when we're putting the MBA class together is how you can benefit from the experiences of those around you as much as you'll benefit from access to faculty and from the actual curriculum itself. So we really are looking for people who are wanting to come on programme, share their experiences, build the network with those around them, and really add to the experience of others, as well as gaining from the experience of the other people in the class. So I would say that's one of the key things that we're looking for, really. I don't know, Liam, if you would say a different thing.
I would definitely echo that for sure. I would also add maybe a couple of things, and this is a very personal answer again, guys, so forgive me, I get quite passionate about this, so I'll keep it reined in as much as I possibly can. I want to see someone that is going to come and work hard and appreciate the opportunity that an Oxford MBA brings with it. There are people around the world that would do anything to be in the shoes of somebody who gets to attend Oxford for any of the courses that are on offer at the institution. So if you're lucky enough to be admitted, and I say lucky because other people would kill for that, but also you'll have earned your place. That's the first thing to remember. You deserve to be here, but don't let that go to your head, is what I'm trying to say. Come in, stay humble, work hard. We want people that have the right balance between a level of confidence about what their strengths are, and we'll ask you in your interview what your strengths are. Be prepared to talk about those with a level of confidence that is not verging on cocky. Stay humble. Tell us a little bit about areas you want to develop. Have the level of self-awareness and the emotional intelligence that shows us you recognize you're not the finished article, and you need the cohort that you'll be a member of. You need the faculty. You need what Oxford can do to you and do for you to be able to achieve what you're looking to do in your career. So aside from collaboration, which is a really great point, Hannah's point was perfect, I would say that balance between ambition and confidence and humility and desire to develop is a really key point for what I personally look for when I interview people to get admitted onto the course. And I'll stop there because I could go on forever.
Great, thank you both. Lots of questions around the 1+1. If you are not accepted to your MSc programme, can you bring forward your MBA admission provided that you are accepted?
Yes, short answer, you definitely can. That's definitely something that is open to you. A number of people that aren't successful in being admitted to both will follow that path. There is no need to fill that year that you would have done the MSc with something else. You can if you want to, but if you want to bring it forward, that option is definitely available to you. Yeah.
Great. I've got a few questions I'm grouping together again regarding post-MBA. So in terms of the feasibility of remaining in the UK whilst job hunting, what support do we offer there? Is there a visa that offers that option? Can you talk to the available options there, please?
Yeah, Hannah, I'll start here if you don't mind, and then just fill in the gaps. So currently, as of things stand right now, your Oxford student visa will allow you to stay in the UK for 6 months after graduation to look for a job if you haven't been able to secure one while you're on the course. There is talk, and there has been talk at government level in the UK here, to bring back the type of student visa that allows you to stay in the UK for 2 years after you've graduated. And while there's no guarantees that we can make about when that will come back in, we do expect that will come back in the near future. And so if someone was joining us in September 2021 and graduating a year later, I would expect, as the way things are at the moment, that 2-year visa will be back in place. So that's just a natural extension you can get beyond your graduation date, which allows you to look for a role if you haven't. And don't forget, hey guys, that 91% of people that find a job within 3 months, you'd have to be in that 9% that wasn't successful to even really need this buffer, but that buffer does exist nonetheless.
Great. Is it common for students to participate in more than one co-curricular activity?
Hannah, this is all yours.
Yes, so I think Liam's touched on this quite a bit. I don't want to keep harping on about how intense the year is, but I think the advice that he gave earlier is really good and is probably what most students will do, which is that you can probably do 2 things outside of the programme to quite a high standard. I'm sure there are lots of members of the MBA class who do more than that. I know certainly in Michaelmas, that's one of the struggles that MBA students have, is trying to prioritise what exactly it is that they want to participate in. And potentially during that semester in particular, there are people who decide that they're going to essentially just sacrifice sleep so that they can take advantage of all of the opportunities that are going to come their way. I think it is important to have some awareness around the time commitment attached to certain things. So in terms of some of the co-curricular offers that are really popular and that we're asked about a lot, ones like Finance Lab and Impact Lab come up a lot. We have lots of students who want to apply for those when they're coming on programme. And it's you know, it is important to be aware that there is a large time commitment attached to those. You're looking at probably around 100 hours for both of those if you're going to participate in them. So with that in mind, we would recommend probably only participating in one of the lab options. But that said, you might do that, and then outside of the business school and the MBA, you may decide that you want to row for your college or be actively involved in the Oxford Union, and there's certainly time to do those things in addition to some of the co-curricular offer as well.
And just further to that, some of those co-curricular offerings, they do happen at the same time, within the same semester. So they may not happen on the same evening necessarily, though there could be some overlap there. It's worth thinking about just how busy you want to make your timetable, and do you physically have the time and the mental capacity to do more than one. So while it's not impossible, just it's something to carefully consider, I think.
Great, we've got some really good questions about the support that we offer to students that are married or are bringing partners or families with them. So could you talk about whether there's facilities at college and what support we generally offer to international students with families travelling with them?
Hannah, do you want to start here?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to say is if you do want more information about this, do please send an email to our team, because we had an amazing webinar just this week, which was focused on partners and families, and we had 6 alumni join who had come on programme either with spouse and kids. We had one amazing lady who actually gave birth within the first week of the programme, who spoke about her experience. So if you are particularly interested in the support available for coming with your spouse and coming with your family, do reach out to the team, and we can always send you the link to that webinar, and you can listen back through it, because they gave us such helpful advice about nursery places and school places and accommodation options, all of those things. Because I guess of the age profile that people come on an MBA, it is a lot more common than probably on other programs for people to be coming with their partner, their spouse, or their children as well. There is certainly support available in terms of accommodation options. So the college that you would apply to be members of, a lot of those colleges do offer family accommodation, some more than others. So when you get to that point, if you do secure an offer of a place on programme, and that's an important part when choosing your college, our team will be really happy to advise you on that and let you know which colleges maybe provide a larger amount of family accommodation. There's also lots of support available in terms of kind of integrating your family into the Oxford experience. You will obviously be incredibly busy on the MBA, so it is reassuring and important to know that your spouse and your family will be able to form connections as well. They'll be able to do that through both the business school and through your college as well. So yes, absolutely, there's lots of support available, and the alumni speak about it with a much better level of detail than I can. So do reach out to our team, and we can make sure to send you across that webinar. And there's loads of useful advice in there.
Great, thank you. We have a few questions around people who have a higher undergraduate degree score but a lower GMAT score, and vice versa. Can people still apply if they don't meet the minimum requirements, and how can they strengthen other aspects of their application?
Good question, thank you. I'll start, Hannah, if you don't mind. So yes, you absolutely can apply if you don't meet those minimum requirements, guys, I would say, and don't tell Liz that I've told you this. Hopefully she's not watching. None of those requirements are really a minimum. They're not really concrete. They're not set in stone. If you don't get a 690 GMAT, please don't worry. If you don't have a first class degree, please don't worry. As I mentioned in the presentation, you will have absolute strengths in your application. So the undergraduate versus the GMAT, there is an argument to be made that an undergraduate degree takes more dedication and takes more skill and more intelligence to achieve because it's over a 3 or a 4 year period in some cases. There's an argument to be made that the GMAT is more important because it's more recent and therefore a better reflection of who you are right now. Both of those are valid. Both of those arguments would stand up in court, probably. What I would say to that is that, again, they're both individually just one of many things that we look at. So how can you make other strengths stand out? The supporting statement is one way of doing that. The careers section in the application form that talks about what do you want to do post MBA, where do you want to work, what kind of company do you want to work for? It's interesting that there's no word count or character count for those answers, and that kind of shows you that that's where we want the detail. So selfishly, as a business school, we want to have alumni that go on to do incredible, amazing things and accomplish these huge feats in the future. The bigger the better, frankly. So we will look at your career plan with a lens that actually might be more important than really anything else on its own. Because if we think you're trying to achieve too much too soon and a 1 year program might not be right for you, it doesn't really matter how good your undergraduate degree result was or how good your GMAT or GRE score is. If we think that your career goal is unobtainable in a 1 year program, that may well make or break your application on its own, whereas a low GMAT or a low undergraduate result will not make or break your application on its own. The career plan may. So talk in detail about what you've done in your career so far, the growth you've been able to show, going back to Hannah's point about growth and responsibilities, leadership opportunities that you've had. It doesn't have to be managing people necessarily, but just have you led on a project? Have you led on an idea somewhere? Talk about those strengths in the professional space, and then use the supporting statement to maybe talk about something on the personal side so we can see a more well-rounded version of who you really are. Hannah, anything to add to that?
No, I think you probably said this already through the presentation. Just, I think sometimes people who are concerned that maybe their GMAT or their undergrad is a bit weaker will use the supporting statement just to maybe provide a little bit of background on that. So if you are concerned about that, I think the supporting statement is a good place maybe just to acknowledge that, so that committee know that you're aware of it, but that actually you feel like your application has other strengths in spite of it. So maybe just keep that in mind when you're trying to think of what you would include in your supporting statement.
Yeah, it's a good point. And guys, we know that everyone's first year, sometimes second year at university, focusing on your academic ability may not be your main driver for that first year away from home as an 18, 19-year-old person. We know that. If you can show some kind of GPA growth over the course of the 4 years where your graduating GPA was higher than your first year GPA, that's very normal to see. If there are real extenuating circumstances behind a lower than you had hoped undergraduate degree, Hannah's right, that supporting statement is a very good place to tell us exactly what happened and how it affected you. So please don't feel as though you cannot apply if you don't meet one of those minimum criteria. They're not really minimum anyway, frankly.
Great. We've got a few questions around references and whether they need to be professional and academic. And Mary has asked a specific question if she would be at a disadvantage if she provided 2 senior partner references from the same company.
Okay, Hannah, do you want to start?
Do you want me to go? Yeah. So I would say in terms of references, so this is a question I would say that we get asked so regularly. There is no need to make sure that one of your references is academic and that one of them is professional. I always think with academic references, unless you've quite recently graduated or you've kept up a really close relationship with a faculty member or a tutor that you had through your university experience, academic references often aren't able to write about you as you are now, or they don't know a lot about what you've done post-graduation, and so they're not really able to write about you with a good level of detail unless they still know you very well. So I think from that perspective, unless you have that relationship, then possibly providing 2 professional referees makes more sense. With references, I think the key is to choose 2 people who really can act as advocates for you, so who can write about you with a good level of detail, who know what your strengths are, who've had some experience of working with you, you know, in the past few years, essentially. And that's really what we're looking for. In terms of kind of who they are and where they're from, that's not particularly important to us, but we're more interested in, having people who can provide a good level of detail about you. So essentially people maybe who you see as having been a mentor for you, or somebody who can really advocate for you.
And just to add to that, so, and that's to Mary's specific question, I think Hannah's covered it, but no, it's not a disadvantage to have a couple of senior partners from the same company if they're the right 2 people to use. You can be, and you should be, quite strategic about your referee choice, because as an example, we had a lady a couple of years ago who was looking to return to the financial institution that she worked for already, but wanted to transition into a new sector, a new department within that institution. And so one of the referees that she chose to ask was the person that would become her boss, that she'd worked with relatively closely on a couple of projects in the past that allowed her to understand this is where she wanted to spend her future career. And so she asked the managing director of that particular branch of the company to write one of her references to kind of lend weight to her argument that this transition she's looking to do would be feasible. And that was a really strong use of one of the referees, where we had her existing manager talk about what she's done, everything in her past so far, and the second referee talk about how he had seen her work in the areas that he had oversight on, and how he would see that transition working in his eyes. And that's a really smart use of referees. So again, don't go for the most senior person you can think of. Try and think about who is the best person and who is best placed to help you elaborate on your career goals and how you're suited to achieve them.
I think just something else to add there, Liam, sorry, that I just thought comes up quite regularly, is they don't have to be from your current employer. So we obviously sometimes have people who apply for the MBA who haven't spoken to their current employer yet about the fact that they're considering doing an MBA, and so they're really concerned that they can't provide a reference from that person, and that's absolutely fine. So, you know, don't be concerned that it has to be from your current employer.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Hannah.
Great, thank you. So I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of the session now, so I think we have time for a couple more questions. Just a quick one. Do you have any preference between the GMAT and the GRE? No. I mean, I have a preference. I've done the GMAT. I haven't done the GRE. I probably would never do the GMAT again if I had the choice. I think GMAT historically is one that people think business schools want, because traditionally it's been the one that people do. We're seeing a growing number of people take the GRE to the point where we're beginning now to be able to report on average GRE scores. We saw the median GMAT on that slide earlier, but we didn't have a median GRE because the sample size is a bit too small to make it a worthwhile number. But it's growing. So my advice here would be just research them both. They're relatively similar, but they do have some differences, and those differences might suit your strengths in a particular way, and that's the one that you go for. We really don't mind which one you pick, not at all.
Right, and probably the last question is from James about our recruitment drive in Africa. So are there scholarships specifically targeted for African candidates, and what stage are they typically offered at?
Hannah, would you like to start?
Yes, so the answer is yes. Easy answer. And always with scholarships, I would recommend going and taking a look on our website. So there's a really useful page on our website where you'll find information about all of the individual scholarships that we offer, the different application requirements for them. For some, as Liam mentioned earlier, there won't be any additional element of application attached, but for others there will. And so that might mean that you'll need to get those in by a specific stage deadline. Liam, you'll probably know more than me in terms of for Africa specific scholarships, if there's a particular point by which they need to apply.
Yeah, so the Africa, the regional scholarships that we have that we control, that are given out from stage one and all year round, there's really no deadline that you have to apply for those because we control who they get given to. It's worth keeping an up-to-date look at that scholarship page. I know there's some work in the background at the moment to hopefully bring in some new scholarships that are specific for the Africa region. At this stage, they haven't been confirmed or finalized yet. I'm not quite sure if they would carry a deadline with them. Generally speaking, the scholarships that do carry deadlines, as Hannah was mentioned in one of her previous answers, that deadline is often January, our stage 3 deadline. So to give yourself as good a chance as possible to get a scholarship that we control, the earlier the better. To give yourself a chance of even being considered for the ones that carry a deadline, I would say January is probably the latest you should be considering applying. Now, recruitment drive in Africa was a general thing, just to go back to that. It's an absolute focus on what we have at the school here. So it's worth noting that the team and I, we don't really have quotas that we have to hit in terms of regional diversity. That just happens naturally every year, but the dean will insist that we have at least 10% of the class of students from Africa. And that is the one thing that he will insist on each year. I think I saw a statistic and recently been working with Tammy Brophy in our team, who is kind of our expert in Africa, where she was talking about how just 2% of the MBA students around the world are students from Africa. But this year in our class, we have 13% of our cohort from the continent. And so if you're looking to do business in Africa, if you're an African candidate, if you're looking to post-MBA go and work within the continent and you want to build a network with people that are from that area or looking to work in that area, then again, that is something that we are particularly strong on and we have a particular focus for. So specific scholarships, yes. Specific events that happen within Africa on the recruitment side, absolutely. Specific events that happen on the course, the Africa Elective, the Africa Business Forum we have in Oxford that takes place every year. There is a real spine running down the middle of everything that we do that is focused particularly on that continent.
Brilliant. Thank you so much both. And thank you everyone for sending in your questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get round to answering all of the questions. We have answered over 200 both live and in the chat box. If we didn't get round to answering your question this morning, we do have a full Q&A session on Friday the 17th of July, so please do join us for that one if you can. If you're not able to join, however, then please do send us an email. Our email address is on the screen. It's oxfordmba@sbs.ox.ac.uk. The inbox is monitored every day, so please do get in touch, send us an email, and one of the team will get back to you. Thank you so much for everyone joining this morning. I hope you are also able to join for the alumni panel and careers presentation later this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.